Have you ever met someone who's so confident, so sure of themselves, that it almost masks the fact that they're completely wrong? Not just occasionally wrong, but consistently unaware of how little they actually understand? And here's the haunting question. What if one day someone thinks the same about you? Now pause. Let that sink in, because here's the uncomfortable truth. Stupidity doesn't always look stupid. It often hides behind confidence, behind charm, behind people who speak loud, move fast, and never stop to reflect. And in a world obsessed with being right, appearing strong, and dominating every room, the most dangerous kind of ignorance is the one that wears a smile. That's why in this video, we're not here to shame anyone. We're here to reflect, to spot the 6 silent habits that quietly reveal intellectual immaturity, sometimes in others, but more importantly, within ourselves. Because if you've ever repeated the same mistakes even when you knew better, found yourself rejecting new ideas without really listening, or talked more than you listened just to prove something, then welcome. You're not broken, you're just human, and you're about to become far more dangerous in the best possible way. The Stoics believe that wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing yourself, brutally, courageously, and constantly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change, for the truth is what I seek, and truth never harmed anyone." And yet so few people today seek truth. They seek approval, comfort, control. But here, we choose a different path, a quieter one, a humbler one, a path built not on opinions, but on self-awareness. Because stupidity isn't a fixed identity. It's a choice we make every time we defend ignorance over growth. So if you're ready to see what most people avoid, if you're ready to stop accidentally being the fool in the room, if you're ready to make your mind a weapon instead of a weakness, then let's begin. And the first sign is something so common, so normalized, that most people wear it like armor without ever realizing it's actually a cage. The first sign of a truly unwise mind is not hatred, not ignorance, it's certainty. That unshakable, rigid belief, I already know. I've heard this before. There's nothing new to learn. You've met them. People who flinch at new ideas like they're threats. People who argue before they listen because they're not trying to understand. They're trying to protect their ego. Closed minds rarely shout. They nod dismissively. They smile politely. But behind that calm exterior is a wall built brick by brick with fear. Fear of being wrong. Fear of change. Fear of losing control. Take Mark, for example, mid-40s, a manager who's been doing this for years. Every time someone on his team suggests a new idea, he says the same thing. "We've tried that before," or worse, "That's not how we do things here." And just like that, innovation dies, creativity suffocates, and the people around him stop trying. Not because the ideas were bad, but because his mind was closed long before the meeting began. You see, the Stoics understood something vital. That wisdom isn't measured by how much you know, but by how open you are to knowing more. Marcus Aurelius said it best. "If anyone can refute me, show me I'm making a mistake or looking at things from the wrong perspective, I'll gladly change. It's the truth I'm after." The foolish seek validation. The wise seek correction. It takes no strength to reject what's unfamiliar, but it takes deep inner confidence to say, "I was wrong. Tell me more. Let me understand." That's not weakness. That's real strength. That's intellectual courage. And without it, you may appear smart, you may sound accomplished, but your world slowly shrinks until the only thing left in it is your own voice. And when someone refuses to look inward, when every mistake is blamed outward, that's not just ignorance. That's a warning sign of something even more destructive. They always have someone to blame: the boss, their childhood, the government, the stars. To them, life is a rigged game, and they're always the unfortunate player. If they fail, it's because someone sabotaged them. If they hurt you, it's because you pushed them. If they're unhappy, it's because the world is unfair. And here's the catch: they don't even realize they're doing it, because blame, when repeated long enough, becomes identity. It becomes armor. It becomes addiction. Take Lisa, an event planner who never finishes a project without chaos. Deadlines missed, clients disappointed, team members exhausted. But it's never her fault. The printer jammed, the vendor canceled, her assistant didn't remind her. So nothing ever gets better, because in her mind, nothing is ever hers to fix. The Stoics warned about this trap. Epictetus said, "When you blame others, you give up your power to change." And that's the core of it. Blaming feels good. It relieves pressure, but it also silently surrenders your power. Because when everything is someone else's fault, nothing is in your hands. Growth, impossible. Change, optional. Responsibility, non-existent. But here's what no one tells you. People who constantly blame others aren't protecting their dignity. They're protecting their fragility. Because admitting I messed up requires strength. It requires you to look in the mirror and, instead of flinching, lean in. That's what separates the wise from the reactive, the strong from the stuck. Responsibility isn't a burden. It's a bridge from the person you were to the person you can become. So next time someone blames everyone but themselves, or you catch yourself doing it, pause, not to criticize, but to ask, what part of this can I own, even if it's just 1%? Because that 1%, that's where power begins. But sometimes, the danger doesn't come from blame. It comes from something even more seductive. The illusion that you're always the smartest person in the room. There's a certain kind of silence that fills a room when someone who knows everything starts talking. Not to explore ideas, not to connect, but to prove they're the smartest person in the room. They interrupt, they correct, they dominate, and worst of all, they rarely listen. Meet Michael, middle-aged, well-read, a manager known for always having an answer. But here's the problem. He doesn't have conversations. He delivers monologues. Even in meetings meant for collaboration, he hijacks the room. He finishes other sentences. He nods, not because he agrees, but because he's waiting for you to stop talking, so he can speak again. To the outside world, he seems intelligent, but to those who know better, he's just loudly insecure. Because the smartest people don't need to be heard the most. They don't need to prove themselves at every turn. They don't need to win every argument. Why? Because wisdom doesn't shout, it listens. The Stoics believe that the truly wise never stop learning, and learning is impossible without humility. Seneca wrote, "You cannot learn what you think you already know." Think about that. How many insights have we missed because we were too focused on crafting a reply instead of absorbing the moment? Arrogance isn't just annoying, it's limiting. It stops growth. It builds walls. It turns every room into a competition instead of a space for connection. But humility, that's where real power begins. Because the humble don't seek to impress, they seek to improve. And that makes them magnetic, trustworthy, quietly unstoppable. So if you ever feel the urge to prove how smart you are, pause, ask yourself, what am I missing? What can I learn from this moment? Because true brilliance isn't about having the last word, it's about knowing when not to speak at all. And while arrogance speaks too much, there's another sign of shallow thinking that speaks too little. Not out of wisdom, but out of emotional distance. A heart that's forgotten how to feel. You're sitting across from them, sharing something that took courage to speak. Your voice is steady, but your heart is vulnerable. You're not asking to be fixed. You're not asking for solutions. You just want to be heard, felt, seen. But then, they reply with a shrug, a smirk, a sentence that cuts deeper than silence ever could. Well, it's not that bad. You're just being sensitive. I've been through worse. And just like that, your emotional door slams shut. Not because you're weak, but because someone just made your pain feel invisible. This is what lack of empathy looks like. It's not always cruel. Sometimes it's polite, distant, smiling even. But beneath that surface is a soul unwilling or unable to sit beside your sorrow. Take Paul, a senior manager, sharp, calculated, respected in his industry. But emotionally, he's cold. His coworker comes to him in tears after losing a loved one, and Paul, looking up from his laptop, simply says, "Take a day off if you need to, but let's not get too emotional, all right?" Not out of malice, but out of emotional blindness. To him, feelings are obstacles, inconveniences, something to push past, not something to sit with. But here's what Stoicism teaches, something most people misunderstand. Being calm doesn't mean being disconnected. Being rational doesn't mean being heartless. In fact, true Stoics practiced empathy not through pity, but through presence. Epictetus reminded us, nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth so we could listen twice as much as we speak. But empathy goes beyond listening. It means creating a space where someone else's pain isn't minimized, dismissed, or judged. It's not about fixing, it's about witnessing. Because when someone opens up to you, they're not handing you a problem. They're handing you a part of their story. And to respond with sarcasm, with indifference, with spiritual coldness, is to say, I don't care enough to hold that. That kind of neglect doesn't just end conversations, it ends connection. And what's more tragic, when someone grows up around people like this, they learn to self-edit, to hold back, to hide, not because they want to, but because they've been taught. Your emotions make people uncomfortable, so they shrink, and slowly they vanish, one unspoken feeling at a time. But you can choose differently, because real intelligence isn't about how well you analyze others. It's about how gently you respond to what you don't understand. But sometimes the damage isn't in what they say or feel. It's in what they refuse to face. The world changes around them, yet they cling to the past, not out of tradition, but out of fear. There's a certain comfort in the familiar, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it's outdated, even when it's slowly eroding who we are. That's the paradox of change. We know we need it, but something inside us clings to what used to be. Not because it's better, but because it's known. Take Michael. He's lived on the same street for over 30 years. Same corner coffee shop, same neighbors. same routine. The world around him evolves. New businesses, new ideas, new people. But Michael, he stays still. He complains about rising prices. He rants about how things used to be. He mocks new technology, new ways of thinking, new generations. But deep down, his resistance isn't about principle. It's about fear. Fear that if the world changes too fast, he'll get left behind. Fear that his identity, built on the old ways, won't survive the shift. So he holds on, white-knuckled, not to memories, but to the illusion of control. The Stoics saw this clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are and to make new things like them." To resist change, then, is to resist nature itself. It's like standing in a river and trying to stop the current with your hands. You'll only exhaust yourself and miss the beauty flowing past you. The fear of change is not stupidity. It's vulnerability disguised as logic, because it's easier to criticize the new than to admit we're scared to be irrelevant. It's easier to romanticize the past than to risk stepping into the unknown future. But here's the brutal truth. Clinging to the past doesn't preserve it. It imprisons you. You stop learning, you stop evolving, you stop seeing, and soon the world moves forward without you. But there's another way, not to chase change blindly, but to walk with it calmly, mindfully, and with intention. The Stoics didn't fear change. They prepared for it. They embraced it as the only constant worth trusting, because to live well isn't to control the river. It's to learn how to flow with it. And yet some people don't fear change at all. They fear silence. They fear not being heard. So they fill every space with sound until no one else can breathe. They talk and talk and talk. They fill every pause. They interrupt every answer. They respond, not to understand, but to dominate. It's not a conversation. It's a performance. You've met them at work, in family dinners, even in friendships you once cherished. You share something meaningful, vulnerable, and before your sentence ends, they jump in with their own story, their own opinion, their own version of what you should think, feel, or say. And suddenly you're no longer seen. You're a background character in their monologue. Take John, a father of two, successful in business, respected in his community. But when he sits down at dinner, he turns the table into a stage. His kids, they stop talking. His wife, she smiles politely, but underneath everyone's emotionally absent because there's no room to show up. John has already occupied all the air in the room. But here's the truth. Talking isn't connection, and volume isn't wisdom. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak." Yet many people do the opposite, because silence makes them uncomfortable. Listening feels like surrender. Letting someone else speak feels like giving up control. But that fear, the need to dominate every interaction, isn't power. It's ego screaming in disguise. Because real confidence doesn't rush to respond. It pauses, it absorbs, it leaves space. When you speak too much, you miss the unspoken, the nuance, the emotion behind the words. You miss the chance to understand what someone didn't say because you were too busy rehearsing your reply. And more dangerously, you teach the people around you to shrink, to stop sharing, to withhold their voice, to protect their stories from your noise. But here's the cost. You become surrounded by silence. Not because people agree, but because they've stopped trying to be heard. Listening isn't passive, it's presence, it's discipline, it's an act of emotional generosity. The wise understand. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing. Just silence, held, with intention. That's where intimacy begins. That's where respect is built. That's where true wisdom listens its way in. So now that you've seen the 6 signs, the question isn't, who around me is foolish? The real question is, where have these signs quietly lived within me? Let's finish this journey together. So now we've walked through the 6 signs, not to judge, not to label, but to reflect. Because the truth is, we've all been that person. We've all closed our minds to things we didn't want to hear. We've all blamed others when the weight of our own choices felt too heavy. We've all let ego speak louder than humility. We've all missed someone's pain, too caught up in our own. We've all feared change and masked it as loyalty to the past. And yes, we've all talked when we should have listened. But the beautiful thing about wisdom is, it's never too late to begin. The Stoics didn't believe in perfection. They believed in progress. They knew that to live well wasn't about getting everything right, but about seeing clearly, adjusting, and continuing with grace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to think, to enjoy, to love." And to think, to really think, means to ask yourself hard questions. It means to hold a mirror, not to others, but to yourself. So don't watch this video and walk away thinking, yeah, I know someone like that. Instead, ask, where do I still have work to do? Where can I trade judgment for curiosity, ego for humility, noise for awareness? Because intelligence isn't fixed. Wisdom isn't a gift. They are practices, rituals, choices, made in quiet moments, in how you speak, how you listen, how you pause before reacting, and how you love others by first being honest with yourself. If even one part of this video helped you see something more clearly, then you're already on the path. Keep going. Keep questioning. Keep choosing awareness, because the wisest people you'll ever meet aren't the loudest. They're the most willing to grow. If this video resonated, share it with someone who's walking that same path. And tell me in the comments, which of the 6 signs surprised you most, and why? Thank you for watching. This is Stoic Secrets.